my name is Eva and I am a knitter, a stitcher and a maker at heart, and this is going to be a video about everything that I have been making in January 2024. It is all knitting because new year, new cast-ons, lots of new things to work on. But just before I get into showing you all of that, I just want to say a huge warm welcome to any returning viewers. I used to make similar videos to this up until a couple of years ago, but I've had a huge long pause just while my life reordered itself around me. You know how it's been the last few years. So yeah, I'm back now. I have taken off all my old content because I just feel like a different person. So it's a fresh start for the channel. So a huge warm welcome to any new viewers as well. Everyone's welcome, so let's have a look at my projects. So the first thing that I've been working on, I cast this on around the new year I think, is the Polesden Scarf, which is a pattern by Amy Loudon. And I was really inspired to knit this by Jana of Swedish Knitting Stories because she cast one on during Vlogmas to work with some really colourful minis that she'd got. And as I had treated myself to some Kate Celine 10-gram minis, I thought it would be a really nice way to work them up. So let's hope that you can see all this. I've got quite far with it. So the pattern calls for, there's lots of different ways you can do it, but the closest one to what I've got was, I think, 11 20-gram minis and 150 grams of Suri silk, Suri alpaca and silk. So I've got 50 grams of Suri and silk and 260 grams of 10-gram minis. I got these 10-gram minis as a lucky dip from Kate Celine, so each one comes wrapped in a little paper bag, so I used that as an advent. I bought 24 and they very kindly put in a couple of extra, which is how come I've got 260 grams. And because I haven't got as much of the alpaca as was called for, instead of doing, you're meant to do like a 20-gram panel of lace in a colour and then a 20-gram or a similar width lace again in the Suri, but I'm just doing little garter strips in between. I'm doing 8 rows of garter stitch just to divide the colours. So it's a bit more frenetic, I would say, than the lovely balanced original design, but I really like it and I just think it's a really nice way to work with the colours. I'm knitting it on Knit Pro Gingers, which are my favourite needles, 3.5, which is what's recommended. And I did start out on some Knit Pro Symphony, but they had a 100cm cable and it was driving me crackers because it's a very inflexible cable. So I just bought some new ones because I know that I'll get a lot of use out of them. These ones are 60 centimetres. So I started with a slightly longer panel. This is 24 rows, I think, of garter. And so this is lace weight, I think, but it kind of works up okay in relation to the fingering weight minis. These are 75% merino, 25% nylon. And I think I've done a little bit of calculating while I was lying awake one night, and I think this is going to be over 2 meters long. It's really quite wide, even though it's the scarf version and not the wrap version. The wrap version of the pattern, I think you knit the merino yarn and the lace weight yarn together, so it makes a really big squishy thing and it's much, much wider. But this suited my yarn requirements a bit better. So I've been working on this most days. It's really, really fun and you just can't wait to get to the next bit to choose the next colour. I've really caked up quite a lot of the future yarns and I've just got a few left that are still in their little mini skeins. Where's my basket? There's the ones that I've still got left to do. So they were a really fun thing to open during December, and being 10 grams it was a bit less expensive than an indie yarn advent calendar. So I'm really happy with how that's going, and yeah, it will probably take me a few months to knit because I knit on it sort of obsessively for the first couple of weeks of January, but then I've had other things to knit, so it's taken a little bit of a back seat, but I will keep trying to work on it regularly so that it's finished, but I probably won't end up wearing it until the end of the year, so there's no immediate rush. So there we are, the Polesden wrap by Amy Loudon. I'm not even halfway yet, so it will take a while, but I can't wait to wear it. And that's just living in a basket that I bought from Homebase. I was hoping that I could snip off the pom-poms thinking that they were sewn on, but they are aggressively glued on, so I think they're staying. But it's really handy for a nice size project like that. So that's number one. My second project is a pair of socks. I had not really had any plans to cast on socks this year because I have enough, and I find that when I have socks on the needle, that's all I want to knit on because they're just so quick and so relaxing. But then my youngest had a friend who was very intrigued about hand knit socks and has a birthday coming up, so I've been commissioned to make a pair of socks, and the brief was earth tones or blues, and I didn't really have many blue yarns, so I opted for this beautiful yarn, which is by Ellie of Craft House Magic, and I had the pleasure of meeting up with Ellie a couple of years ago when I used to live in Shropshire, because when Ellie came back to Shrewsbury to see her family, we met up and she really kindly gave me this lovely yarn, which is called Walking in the Air, and I have put it together with some mini skeins which were also a present from my friend Sarah, and they are by the KFI collection, and they're little 10-gram minis of 75% wool, 25% polyamide. Doesn't say if it's superwash or not, and I kind of hope they are, because this person is not really going to be faffing around with yarn care. And the pattern that I'm using for this is the Red Robin by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade, and it's a really nice and easy stitch pattern. You only have to do something every so often to get this lovely effect. And I'm going to do, I've done sky blue for the heel, and I'm going to use olive for the, sky blue for the cuff, olive for the heel, and coffee for the toes. So I hope that hits the brief, and you never know, we could have another convert to hand knit socks if they like it. So I'm working a little bit on those every day, at least try to do a couple of pattern repeats. It's really my own basic recipe with the stitch pattern inserted into that. I do 64 stitches on 2.25mm circular needles, and I put waste yarn in and go back and cut in a heel, and I do a wedge toe. So I think that's all I need to say about those, and hopefully I'll be able to show you those when they're completed before they go off to the recipient. The third thing I have to show you is some Maxine hot water bottle covers, which is a pattern by Penrose Knits, or Laura Penrose. And I bought this pattern as soon as it came out because I often joke that I have an emotional support hot water bottle. I just use them all the time, find them really cosy and comforting. I don't enjoy feeling cold in the winter, so it often cheers me up to have a nice hot water bottle, and I always have one at night. And so this is my first one. I knit this from some Lay Family Yarn minis. They were doing kits for this, but I wanted to choose my own base, and the base is by West Yorkshire Spinners, and it's called Exquisite, and it's a blend of Falkland wool and silk. And I did know when I bought it that that wasn't perhaps the most practical base for something that's going to be moved around a lot and in and out of bed clothing and things like that, and it has bobbled a little bit, but it was just what I had in mind. And I was in London, which is not, I'm not a fancy Dan who pops to London all the time, but I had to be there, and I went into Liberty's just for a lovely hour, and I had something like this in mind, and it seemed like fate. I went into the haberdashery department, walked over to the wall, picked this up, saw that it was fingering weight, which is what's called for in the pattern, you hold it double, and it was just the right colour, and they were having 20% off everything that day, so I felt like it was meant to be, and I think it goes really nicely with the little minis. These are 10-gram minis from Lay Family Yarn, and with the exception of the neon, which is by Socks Yeah from Coop Knits, and it's in the colour Helium, I think. I don't think they do it anymore, which is really a shame because I love it. I had plans to only use it for the one that takes the least yarn, which is I think what I've used this purple for, but it did say in the pattern that you might need slightly over 10 grams for colour number 1. So I used that because I had a little bit more of this, and I don't think I did use over 10 grams, and I feel like what should have been a little pop of colour, I've overused it a bit, but that's not to say I don't like it. I'm really, really happy with it, and it's really lovely having a wool cover. It just seems to keep the heat in the hot water bottle a lot longer, and it's just really lovely to have something that I've made that I use every day like this. So that's the version of the pattern that uses 6 colours in total, the main colour and 5 contrast. And then my eldest wanted one, and she really likes bright colours, so she requested red, blue and green. So I used that opportunity to try out a new yarn from Drops Yarns, fairly new, called Daisy, which is a DK yarn, so I didn't have to bother with holding things together, and I knit up this one, which is the 3-colour version, which was really, really quick. I did this in 3 or 4 days, I think, just a couple of hours a day. Well, let's just fold this cuff down so you can see it properly. I do wish, by the way, that I'd knit the cuff slightly longer on my one. It just kind of doesn't quite do it. I was really worried, by the way, the whole time I was knitting this. It's my first proper stranded colour work project, and so I thought it was an ideal first try because it's so small. It's not like a big jumper that if it goes wrong you've wasted hours and hours, and I was really worried about the gauge the whole time. I was knitting it while I was watching various vlogmases after Christmas, and people were holding up theirs, and I was thinking mine definitely looks smaller, but it blocked out absolutely fine. And so, yeah, I did knit this one slightly longer at the top, and I think that does sit a little bit better. And again, it blocked out really nicely. You spray it and then you put it inside a nice warm hot water bottle so it can relax and take the shape of the hot water bottle. So this yarn from Drops is 100% wool. It's not superwash. It was really, really nice to work with. It feels quite soft. I don't know how it will hold up, if it will bobble like the other one, but it was really, really nice to knit with, and I think the result is great. They're not colours that I would choose, but my eldest is very, very happy with it. And it was really fun to knit, and the 3-colour version was like nice and relaxing. Still quite a few ends to weave in, but definitely worth the time. So I would love to knit more of these. It's like a really, really fun pattern and a great introduction to colour work. I wonder if I could even tackle a jumper now, maybe. So that's the Maxine hot water bottle by Laura Penrose. And the final project I've got to show you, I would like to ask your advice, please. This is something else that I cast on in the new year, and if I show you where I keep my yarn scraps. I've got this great big vase which was left behind in the house that we moved into, so I cleaned it out and put it to good use. And this is where I keep all of my scraps from socks and any fingering weight projects. It does need a little bit of a sort out. Things get tangled. No matter how much I tuck the ends in, things get tangled. So some stuff in here I absolutely love, and some things have been there for a long time, because like this, for example, is a Shepier's Metropolis yarn, and it's got lots of cuts and knots in it and things, and it's, you know, maybe I just shouldn't pursue it, but so it's, you know, a mixed selection of yarns. So I've wanted for a long time to cast on an easy garter stitch blanket. So I bought a cone of yarn. I think this is by King Cole, and again it's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and confusingly, although it's an Aran fingering weight yarn, it's called Aran. The colourway is Aran, and it's a very, well, I'm starting to think it's quite a, it's not like a warm cream colour, it's a white yarn. It's not exactly white, but it's not a warm colour. And the reason I'm explaining all this about the scraps is because I'm wondering if that's the problem. I have cast on oh, hang on, I have cast on I think 5mm needles. I'm pretty sure it's 5mm needles, holding the cone and my various scraps double. I've cast on 222 stitches, which is just an arbitrary amount, and I'm quite happy with the length of it. I can't quite tell because it's, I think it's on a 150cm cable maybe, but it looks big enough to me. I'm happy enough with the width, but I just don't really like the way it's going, and I wanted to ask you what you thought really. Let's fold it in half so we can get a good look at it. I kind of think scrappy, what I was after was something that I didn't have to think about. I didn't really have to coordinate. I didn't have to choose colours too carefully, but I'm just not enjoying the way that it's looking. And I think the problem is that the, let's just call it the white yarn is, and let me show it to you closely so you can kind of see what you think. The lighting is not great today. It's very bleak outside, but I hope you can see the kind of colour that I'm trying to describe. I'm thinking, is the problem that that is just not marling in nicely with the colours? They always look very separate. And is that why it's just not looking the way I think it should look? They did have a sort of oatmeal coloured base, like a beigey base, and I wonder if I should have bought that. So I've probably put in 2 or 3 hours work on this already. I did it for a couple of hours when I cast on just to get it going, and then it's a great project to knit on because I just keep it in my workroom, which is between the kitchen and the hallway. So if I've got 5 minutes waiting for someone, or you know, waiting for the bread to come out of the oven, I can just sit down and put a few stitches on it, and you can put it down and pick it up without having to make any kind of notes as to where you are or what you're doing. So in principle, it's a really great project. It's a great way to use up the scraps. But what I'm hoping for from you is help with, does it look bad? I won't be offended because I kind of think it does. Do you think it's the yarn base? Do you think it's my scraps? Should I knit something other than a garter blanket? Like, would a texture be better if it was ribbed or fisherman's rib or something? But that again makes it a bit more, requires a bit more thought. And so I feel like I've got a few options. I could carry on and hope that as it gets bigger it kind of settles into itself and looks better. I could frog it, and I could maybe, I mean this would be a lot of work, but what if I skeined up this 500-gram cone into 5 100 grams and dyed it a slightly more mellow colour, like a very pale brown. I could just buy the oatmeal cone, but I didn't really want to go and have to buy more yarn. I think this cost £27.99, so it's, you know, I'd kind of rather use this if I could, but if this is the problem, then I need to do something different. So I don't know, I'd really appreciate your thoughts as to how to proceed with this, and if you've got any tips on how to just do it so it looks a bit better, really. So yeah, that's my garter stitch blanket. I haven't worked on it for about a week because I wanted to wait and ask you before I put any more time into it what you think. So it's a really, really enjoyable thing to do. I just don't feel like it's coming out as I had hoped, really. And is the problem the base? I'm just not sure. So any thoughts, greatly appreciated if you feel like commenting below. So that's pretty much everything I've been working on so far this month. So I think that's about all for today. I just thought I'd keep it quite short while I get back used to doing this again. Please stick around if you want to see a little bit of footage from my January so far. And before I go, I would just like to invite you to join my free membership over on Patreon. I would eventually like to do a paid membership, but the free membership will always remain there with no obligation to pay anything. I would just really like to build a little community that is not subject to algorithms and advertisements and things. So what I'm providing over there from my free membership is a blog, which I've got one post so far, which is about my Polesden wrap, and occasional videos, and that will always remain the same even if I do add a paid for tier later on. So if you fancy joining me over there, I would really love to see you there. And all that remains is for me to say thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I wish you a wonderful time with your making. Bye for now.